Um, Shift Book Club. Morning, John. Shift Book Club, tactic number 11, market of the moment. We'll talk about kind of what it is, what it isn't, and answer questions, have a conversation, that type of thing. So when we talk about market of the moment, you know, what does that mean? I think it's about how things change, and it's the new sort of rhythms and the new cycles that a shift in the market will cause, which creates two things. It's how we do business, and then it's the what of the business that we're doing. And the how we do business is like right now, the market of the moment for today is because of COVID. We have, you know, we're not having open houses.
Second, I'm getting them on this call.
Okay.
And then when I'm settled, I'll help you out.
Okay, great. I'll just leave the address.
The market of the moment for right now is we're not doing open houses. We are doing Zoom calls. We're doing all the, you know, the additional disclosures that we have to sign. Things are a little different as far as how we're doing business. We're still doing business, obviously. It just looks a little differently. Matterports, virtual tours, that type of thing. You know, I did my first Matterport tour probably 3 years ago, and I hated it. It took so long for the guy to do it. I didn't think it looked good, and I said, I'm never doing this again. But now, obviously, with everything that's going on, we have to do these virtual tours. So that's you know, the part of the market of the moment and the how we're doing business. The other thing is what we're doing in business based on changes in around us. You know, whether it's an economic downturn, people are losing their jobs. Obviously, with COVID, you know, things change and create new opportunities. Alfredo, do you want to pop it up for us?
You bet. 1 second.
Sure. I didn't mean to change the branding on these slides, but I'm going to say this is the coolest thing I've ever created, this first slide right here.
Yeah.
And all I did was hit a button, so I can't really take much credit for it. So fantastic. So if you can go to the next slide, or the first slide, please. Next slide, I guess.
Sorry for the interruption. Good morning, everyone. But Howard, you can't just say this is the coolest thing you've ever done and not tell us how you did it by pressing one button.
It's all I did. I went into PowerPoint because I was combining the slides, and I was just trying to cut and paste. And on the right side of the screen, there were some options. I clicked on it, and it just literally became this.
Nice.
So I hit save rather quickly.
Nice.
So the market of the moment is also, again, you know, due to things that are happening. And whether it's an economic downturn or whatnot, it'll present an opportunity for types of sales that we don't usually, sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen, boom, boom. Let's try that, sorry. Market of the moment will create opportunities for things that we don't often see, like back in 2008, short sales, foreclosures, and REOs. So let's talk about those three things as to how they pertain to today's market, and go through what they are and a little bit of what they are not, and look at them from representing both sellers as well as buyers. So let's talk about short sales. What is a short sale? A short sale is a situation where, let's say a buyer gets behind on their, a seller gets behind on their mortgage payments. They've lost their job. There's been a death in the family. They are being relocated, that type of thing. And they're upside down on the price of their property, owe more than it's worth. Let's say they owe the bank $800,000 and the house is only worth $650,000. They have two choices. They can sell it and take a massive hit personally, or depending on their circumstances, they can try to negotiate what's called a short sale, which means they get the lender, their bank, to accept less money than they actually owe on the property. Okay. What does that look like? What are the logistics of it? Again, the buyer needs to be in a situation where they've missed a few payments, okay, for whatever their specific reasons are. Once that happens, the bank will issue a document called the notice of default. That means that they've been put on notice that the mortgage is in arrears, it has not been paid, and they're given a period of time within which to come current or repay the loan, or you can work out a forbearance or a loan mod, but there's a certain period of time that they're given to make it right. After that period of time, there is a sale date that upon which the bank will sell the property at auction. So if you're trying to help your seller affect a short sale, you don't have unlimited time. It's not like a regular listing where, hey, I'm going to put it on the market today on June 25th. Hopefully I sell it quickly, but if it goes into August, September, October, November, if the seller's willing, then hey, that's fine. With a short sale, there's a ticking clock, and you have to get it done within a certain period of time. As you get close to that auction date, depending on where you are in the process, you can often push that date back if you can prove to the bank that we're in negotiations, we're in counter offers, we're expecting a final offer, that type of thing. And then quite often the bank will work with you because, again, they don't really want to foreclose, which we'll get into in a minute because it costs them money. So as long as you're in communication with the
Did we lose Howie?
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So again, if as you get closer to the auction date, to the sale date, as long as you communicate with the bank that you're knee deep in the process, you can quite often get that date pushed back, which is a good thing. Short sales are unique because the seller is your client, the person that owns the house. However, you need to work hand in hand with the bank, get their approval for this whole thing to work. So even though the seller owns the house, you need the bank's approval for this to happen. And the bank's not just going to speak to you if you call them out of the blue and say, hey, I represent Joe Blow. I know they owe you $800,000, but they want to give you $650,000. Can we have a conversation about that? There's a whole process you have to go through to start to get to the starting line. And what that looks like is you're going to need to get what's called a letter of authorization from the seller stating that they're giving you permission to speak to the bank or the company that's holding the loan regarding, and it's you can create your own, you can find them online or talk to someone that's done it before. And if you're doing short sales, it's not a bad thing to have that as a template, because then when you're going to talk to new sellers, you can just sort of fill in the blanks that, Howie Nickel loan 12345 for, the property address 600 Elm Street, Bank of America. Alfredo is my listing agent. Please talk to him. Once you do that, you're going to be reaching out to what's called the loss mitigation department. And there's a lot of interaction with the bank. There's a lot of communication. You're going to deal with a lot of different people. As I said before, during this time, the bank's going to bring up the idea of loan modification or forbearance, where they try to rework the loan to help the seller stay in the house. But that doesn't always work, because sometimes those are just versions of punting, meaning if somebody's lost their job or they can't work anymore, they literally have no means of paying the mortgage. It doesn't matter if they get an extra 3 months or 4 months from the bank. They can't pay it now, they can't pay it then, so they have to get out of the house. That's why a short sale attempting a short sale makes sense. So then, can you go to the next slide, Alfredo, please? So what you're going to do is, which slide is this? Did we skip a slide? We probably slipped. Yeah, so this is actually just reaffirming that on the bottom here, a short sale is a contract between the buyer and seller with at least, again, the seller is your client. You're going to bring in a buyer to buy the house, but there's a contingency, and that is that the deal is approved by the seller's lender as a settlement for less than what is owed. So once you start talking, Alfredo, next slide, please. Thank you. Once you start talking to the loss mitigation department, you have to create a package for the bank, because the seller, they want to know that the bank wants to know that the seller's legit and that there's been a hardship and that they just haven't decided out of the blue, you know what, I'm not going to make my payments anymore. So you have to come up with what's called a the whole package, which includes a hardship letter, the listing agreement, all sorts of financial documents, if there's a death certificate, unemployment things. Eventually, you're going to have to show the purchase agreement from the deal that's in play. There's a lot of communication with the bank. There are a lot of phone calls with the bank. There's a lot of time being put on hold with the bank. And if you are, if you are looking to list these type of properties, you have to have a lot of patience. Can you go to the next slide, Alfredo, please? The next one, I think go in the other direction. Yeah, so, yeah, that's fine. Again, the bank's going to want to know that the lender is for real, and the bank wants to know that the seller is for real and that there's an actual hardship. You can't just say, oh, the market's, upside down, I'm gonna short sell my house. There needs to be a reason why, and it needs to be, proven. So when you're dealing with the bank, can you go to the next slide? Keep going. Yeah, perfect. So when you're dealing with the bank, again, you can be on the phone for hours sometimes. And we all know that our time is money, and that might not be the best use of our time when you're just waiting to get to the, your contact there to give one little piece of information. So quite often people who do short sales will actually hire what's called a short sale specialist, which is somebody that all they do is work on short sales. So what this graph is showing us here is that there are I think there's only 2 out of the 3, but the first one is you handle everything from beginning to end. I have the short sale, and I'm negotiating everything with the bank, even though it's going to take me a long time. First deal I ever did in real estate was a short sale, and it was a great learning process because I literally had no idea what I was doing in real estate and no idea how to do a short sale, and I got it done. And there were 2 banks involved, and I had to negotiate, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I didn't know at the time that you could hire someone else. I don't even know if that was happening 14 years ago. But it is an option that it's a business decision. And if you bring somebody else on, then you would just, you're either going to split the commission with them or you get a referral fee. It's up to you to figure out how. But like everything else, it's a choice or a business decision on how you want to handle it. Once you have the listing, let's say you're doing it yourself, you market it like any other property. You have to disclose, however, in the verbiage on the MLS that all sales are subject to the lender's approval. Because again, on a regular sale, your seller's listing it for $800,000. If you get an offer for $700,000, they can accept it. This has to be approved by the bank, so everybody needs to know that is the point.
Hey, Howie, it's Austin. Quick question.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if you're going to get into it a little bit later, but we're already at the listing stage. What's your opinion and thought on commissions? Because there are differing philosophies that, hey, now that it's, since it's a short sale, let's hit them for the most that we can. The bank is really, the most important thing to the bank is to get rid of this before they lose more. So they're more willing to often times offer or pay the 6%. Some people are very gun shy and ask for, 5 or less.
Yeah, I think it's actually more black and white than that, Austin. My experience is that go for the 6%, but I'm pretty sure that the banks have their number that they're going to use.
Okay.
If it's like working with builders. You think you're walking into 2.5%, but they're going to tell you, no, you're selling this for 1.5 or maybe 2 because I'm going to give you 3 deals this year, that type of thing. So I think most banks have their own number. But yeah, ask for 6%. Ask for as much as you can. Everything's negotiable. Well, to a point. They're just going to say it is what I think they're going to say it is what it is.
Cool.
Howie's spot on. Ask for the 6. You might get it sometimes, but they'll probably drop it to around 5. And sometimes they're going to try to get you to throw in crazy stuff. There's a twilightness to short pays, which are unpredictable, and you just don't know how the bank's going to go. And ultimately, where of course, a regular deal gets accepted, the banks could take almost any deal at any time. So there's a risk to the buyer on the deals.
Say that again, Robert. There's a risk to the buyer?
Well, let's say you're in escrow on a short pay,
right,
and the bank gets wind of another offer.
Oh.
The bank can just drop that one and take the other one. It's the least regulated or predictable transactions I've seen. There aren't really guarantees. It's almost like the Wild West with different banks.
You bring up an interesting point that I was not going to get into, but when on the listing side, it's actually recommended that once you get, well, I don't want to say this incorrectly, like I'm not implying to do anything illegal. However, I think negotiators on short sales at the bank, once you submit an offer to them, don't send them another offer. Don't let them know that, oh, there's another offer coming, because it could blow up the deal. It could make it go longer. And I'm not saying, again, if you receive an offer, you're supposed to submit it to your seller. But I think it's a little different. You would handle, I think you would tread more delicately in a short sale situation.
What Howie's saying is the banks are somewhat incompetent and unpredictable. They are scared to make a decision. It's committees. They don't go by logic or profit. They're really, I've had lawyers and accountants try to advise buyers and sellers, and the lawyers say, look, I cannot predict this stuff. It's basically unpredictable. Yeah. So by giving them only one to look at, to chew on, it's going to make life simpler. Think of them almost as a 2-year-old or maybe a 1.5-year-old who can't even count.
Yeah.
And this, that's absolutely correct. And it'll apply to foreclosures too. Banks know money. They don't know real estate.
Right.
So when it's on their books, they just want to get it off their books as quickly as possible.
Right.
But they don't understand how to do that. We're the experts. That's why they rely on us. But they don't always listen to us because they've got all the money and all the power. So
right.
They're complete bozos when it comes to real estate.
Yeah.
I actually wish that Austin had a standard. That was the standard, but it's worse in my experience than what even Austin just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that is, Robert, you said they're unpredictable. The only thing that is predictable is that short sales take a long time. They take longer than a regular sale. And I'm saying that because it's our job, as it always is, to manage our clients' expectations. We have to manage the seller, our client. We also have to let the buyer side know, because if the buyer's agent has never done a short sale before, they're going to say, I submitted the offer yesterday and I put a 10-hour time frame on it. Where's my response? It doesn't work that way. You have to let them know up front that the bank is involved, and it's their world. We're just kind of living in it. The bank is Beyonce. They make the rules. So the other thing that the seller needs to understand is they need to understand their sort of role here, in that I forget where the laws are right now with forgiveness and taxes, but what I mean by that is they owe $800,000. The bank approves a short sale at $650,000. That's a difference of $150,000 that's being forgiven. However, to the government, that's money that they will view as income or money earned, which means it should be taxed. However, the seller didn't actually receive that $150,000. So they need to understand, we're not lawyers, we're not financial planners. They need to check with their own people and understand the potential tax ramifications of what a short sale may be. Now, I'm pretty sure that in California that the tax implications have been waived. That's how it was back in 2008 during the crisis. And I would imagine right now, because of COVID and whatnot, I know that they put the moratorium on foreclosures and stuff like that. But even in regular times, it's still best to check. It's not, we don't make those rules. So our clients need to understand. You also will want to get documentation from the bank for your seller that says they're not going to come after them down the road for the money that was forgiven, for the $150,000. Sometimes the bank will say no. So in that case, I recommend, and I had to do this on my deal, get a letter, get something in writing between you and your seller saying that they understand what they're getting into and they do not hold you, liable for anything down the road. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes there are two banks involved. There's a first loan and a second loan. And usually there's, a great difference in price. The first loan is the primary loan. It's much bigger. And they'll agree to take, let's say, again, the short sale's for $650. Let's say that first loan is for, $600,000 and the second loan is for $50. If the first loan says, or whatever, however the numbers work out, if it wipes out the whole first loan, but there's not enough to go to the second loan, you then have to negotiate with that second bank and say, look, you're either going to get nothing or you're going to get, say, like, I think that's what happened on one of the deals I did. It was Joe from the Bank of Chicago. This is literally the first deal I ever did. I'm negotiating about something I have no idea what I'm doing. And I got it. And I convinced him that, or made him realize that, look, you should accept the $5,000 as opposed to the 25 or 30 that you're owed, because if you don't take it, you're guaranteed to get nothing. And that logic worked, and I got the deal done. But there's a lot of negotiating. Again, that's why sometimes people will bring in a short sale specialist to help with that process. So that's basically a short sale. You're asking the bank to accept less money than is owed, and it's a whole process that you have to go through to show the bank that there's a real hardship, and now we have an offer, and hopefully they'll accept it. What happens though if short sale does not happen? Okay, the property. Let's go back a step. Property received a notice of default, and for whatever reason, the seller, again, they weren't making their payments. They can't make their payments. Maybe they just left town. So the bank had previously issued the NOD, the notice of default, warning of an impending sale. Now the foreclosure sale is about to happen, and that takes place in the form of an auction. Usually it's on the steps, literally, of the courthouse. I think sometimes it can happen at the actual property, or unless I'm getting that confused with the probate sales. But a foreclosure is literally that. It's the bank is it's going to auction, rather. And when you're representing buyers for these auctions, again, you don't need to do anything. I suggest that you make sure that your clients are savvy about the process, because it's not like a regular sale. Quite often they're sold as is. They have to pay in cash. They have to show up at the auction with a check, with a down payment, if not the whole thing. Often there's no opportunity to inspect the home. And with that, the property could have damage, unforeseen damage. There could be additional liens on a property that you don't know about. There could be title issues. So foreclosure sales are, they are tricky, to say the least. It's not about, oh, great, it's in foreclosure, let's go pick it up and I'm going to make $1 bazillion. It's not a slam dunk. Okay. So let's say the property does not sell at auction. What happens now? that means that the bank that had loaned on the property with a promissory note saying, if you don't pay the loan back, the house is collateral and I'm taking it back, that's what has just happened. If it doesn't go to short sale, if it doesn't sell at foreclosure auction, the bank now owns the property, okay? It's a real estate owned property, REO property. However, as Robert or Austin said, banks and financial institutions, they're in the business of lending money. That's how they make their money. They're not in the business of owning homes and maintaining properties, because that costs them money. All they care about is the bottom line. So once a bank takes back a property because it's been foreclosed, they're going to be eager to sell it and get it off their books. That's where, again, the market of the moment, shifting in the market, real estate, REO properties are an opportunity for us as listing agents to sell these properties. But being an REO, an REO listing agent, there are many similarities between what we usually do, i.e. marketing, negotiating, selling the property, yet there are kind of two additional layers as well that make them different. The first and most glaring one is, how do we get them? How do we get those REO listings? We all know that the crux of our business in real estate is lead generation, okay? Sphere of influence, expireds, FSBOs, door knocking, whatever it is. We're fishing for sellers, okay? With REOs, the seller is the bank or the financial institution that owns the property. So how do we get those listings? It's not an easy process. We have to go through what are called asset managers. And asset managers are kind of a mysterious group of people. Quite often they work directly for the bank, or they work for a third-party company called an asset management group or asset management company that's hired by the bank, where all they do is service and handle the process of selling REO properties, okay? These asset managers are the gatekeepers. They are the ones that that handle all the properties, and they are the people that you want to get to. They literally the asset managers, they will often be in different states from where the properties are located. They've never seen the property, and they have probably 400 files on their desk of different properties that they are trying to sell and get off their books for the bank. All it is, I had a builder say this to me the other day in regards to his seller who's building the house. He's like, to the seller, it's his life, it's his sweat and tears, it's his nest egg. To the builder, it's just four walls and a roof. That's how it is to the asset managers. It's an asset. It could be widgets, it could be bicycles, it could be cars. It just happens to be a house. We happen to sell homes, so we want to try to get to those asset managers. How do you do that? Well, you have to figure out who they are. How do you do that? You have to do your research. You have to, you can do it on the MLS. Just do a keyword search, find out foreclosures, find out, look for REOs, see which banks are selling in your neighborhood. See, oh, there's an REO in Westwood. See who the bank is, then do some research as to who's the asset management company, then find out who the asset manager is. It just takes some detective work. It's not easy, but it can be done. There are people that have kind of built really good businesses of only selling REOs. They're kind of like surfers in that they'll ride the business. Back in 2008, there were people that made millions of dollars because the market had been flooded. And then either by choice or by circumstance, a lot of those agents didn't do business once the REO craze, it never went away, but it certainly slowed down exponentially. But the goal is to figure out who the asset managers are, there are REO conventions, kind of like the way we have Family Reunion and Mega Camp. There's something called 5 Star. There's something called, forget what the other big one is, and they might be on hold because of COVID, but, find out, actually, can you go to the next slide, Alfredo, please? Find out where the asset managers are. Bring them lunch. You know, there are some out in Calabasas. There are lots in, you know, Houston, Texas. Make a point to go travel to where they are and just make them understand that you understand what's involved as a listing agent on the REO side of the business. Okay. Next slide, Alfredo, please. Again, this is just in terms of how to find who the asset managers are and where they are. So again, you want to impress upon them that you know how things are done. What does that mean? Yeah.
Hey, so do they negotiate? Like, you know, there's always negotiations going back between both agents, or do they do all the negotiating?
The asset managers?
Done, all that kind of stuff?
Generally, it's the agent. The asset manager is going to give it to you, ask you for a price opinion. He wants it to sell quickly. So if you come in high, he's not going to give you repeat business. They'll usually let you be a second backup in a sense. And I've had those.
Okay.
You got a regulated paperwork with them. You got to send them how many showings, updates weekly. It's very robotic, and that's what they expect. And of course, again, they're looking at numbers. They want it to be sold quickly too.
The asset manager does not do the negotiation. It's all on you, but you want to get, again, they're the seller. So think about it, Brian, in terms of a regular deal, you know, a non-REO, non-foreclosure. You're selling my house. Okay. I'm the seller. You're my agent. I'm not negotiating with the buyer. You're negotiating with the buyer. So that's the same thing in an REO. But the biggest difference is, and this is what Robert sort of just alluded to, when you work with an asset manager, you have what are called tasks, and they literally use that word, which must be done in a timely manner on a daily basis. You cannot skip ahead. You have to do point A to point B to point C in order, and they all have their own portals, kind of like with short sales. When you create the package that I mentioned earlier, everything needs to be loaded into, you know, B of A has their own portal. Wells Fargo has their own portal. Or sometimes there are now companies out there called like Pyramid is one, and a couple of others that are some of these big banks subscribe to for you to be able to interact with the banks. But the thing about becoming an REO agent is there are a lot of things involved that we do not do in regular sales. There's a lot of property management responsibilities that are on you as the listing agent. And quite often you actually have to lay out upfront fees, unless you negotiate that with the asset manager, which sometimes can be done. You have to oversee, be responsible for, and sometimes pay for upfront things such as, you know, let's say the property's vacant. You have to have it rekeyed with specific security codes and keys so that other vendors can show up to do what they need to do. You may need to turn on the utilities. If the house has been, you know, left in disarray, you may need to have it trashed out. You may need to hire a gardener. You may need to get bids for it to be rehabbed if the asset manager wants it. If someone's still living in the property, you may need to negotiate getting them out with something called cash for keys, which is literally, again, you don't just do this out of your own pocket, but with the asset manager's input, you know, you can say, look, to the person that's staying there or still living there, you know, you have 7 days to get out to vacate the property, and in return, we'll give you $1,000 or whatever the number is. If that doesn't happen, you know, unfortunately, sometimes you have to arrange for an eviction. There's a lot that goes on here. You get sucked into, you know, as real estate agents, we all know that we're also therapists. You get pulled into on these type of distress sales. You get pulled into situations that you quite often don't deal with in regular deals. You know, sometimes there may be squatters living in the house, and you have to get them out. So there could be safety issues. There's all kinds of other things that go on. But once you kind of get a handle on that, you're dealing with your asset manager on a weekly, if not daily basis, as Robert referred to. You're giving them weekly updates, you're giving them reports, you're running comps, you're doing what's called a BPO, a broker price opinion, which is sort of like a very in-depth CMA or market analysis about where this property fits into the market at large and why you think the property should be priced the way it is. And look, for a regular sale, I don't ever suggest going in with a big number if you don't believe it, because it's only going to come back to bite you in the ass with your seller. If you say, oh, I could sell this for $2 million all day long, but you know it's only worth 1.5, eventually the rubber's going to hit the road with your seller, and they're going to come at you and say, well, you told me 2 million. Same thing with an REO. You do not want to overpromise on the price, because you have to give them, daily updates, weekly updates of what is happening in the market, as well as what's happening or not happening with your property. So you want to, I think you'd rather be conservative and let on pricing and let them say, no, I think it's worth more. And then just have the backup, and have the courage to stand by your convictions of why you think the pricing should be what it is. And then you're going to, this is a little bit out of order, but then you're going to list the property, and then you're going to sell that bad boy. When you receive an offer, you present it to the asset manager. It's got everything, even the offer has to be presented in a certain way because it needs to be loaded into the portal. It's not, like, I'm sure this bothers you guys as well, but there's nothing more annoying to me than when people either, hey, I'm sending you an offer, and it's in like 7 different PDFs, or you want proof of funds, and they'll send you a picture on their phone of the document. No, just make it clean, make it professional. Don't make me do your job in a regular sale, and certainly it's not going to happen in an REO. Austin, I see you smiling, because if you're submitting an offer for an REO, it has to be submitted in the proper way, or the agent won't accept it. They won't even submit it, because they're literally, a lot of REO agents are dealing in volume, and quite often you can't even get them on the phone. Or that used to be years ago. I don't know if you guys have had that experience lately. But people who only do REOs, quite often it's text only, and not a lot of quick feedback. But when you get an offer, you submit it, and different than a short sale, you'll probably get a response from the asset manager within 48 to 72 hours, which is kind of good. The other best thing about, as a buyer at least, and even representing the seller, when you're dealing with REOs, there's no emotion on the side of the seller. Okay, when I'm selling my house, if I get a lowball offer, I'm going to be pissed off about it. I'm going to hem and haw, talk to my wife. Well, look, maybe the market's turning, blah, blah, blah. The bank doesn't care about that. Somebody, Austin or Robert, said it earlier. They only care about numbers. I sold an REO, I represented the buyer, and actually the listing agent was very cool. I don't remember why he gave me this information, but I dug as much as I could for information, and he told me the ballpark of where the other offer was. And he basically just said, if you come in $5,000 over, you're going to get the deal. I told my client that, we did it, we got the deal. And, so there's no emotion. That's one of the differences. And then back to Austin, what you asked me earlier, with commissions and REOs, they absolutely set the price. Again, you can ask anything you want, but it's often less than 2.5%, but they're viewing it as, again, REOs will often be a volume business. And, look, just like our regular clients, I don't care if you're selling a $300,000 condo or a $30 million property. We want to do the best we can for our clients from A to Z. So when that deal is done, if not beforehand, they are referring us to their friends and other people, okay, to get more business. It's the same thing with REOs. Once you are in with an asset manager, if you do a good job for them, starts out potentially as a trickle of business, can really be a a deluge, or the faucet can turn on. And you'll if you talk to agents that specialize in REO, they've got tens, if not hundreds, of potential listings throughout a year because they are working with different asset managers, and they're showing them that they know how to do it. So that's basically the difference between the short sale, the foreclosure. Samantha just asked the question that just popped up: who sets the commission with an REO? The bank sets the commission. The bank and the asset manager set that, what the commission is. So those are basically the differences: short sale foreclosure and REO. Market of the moment. My 2 cents. Alfredo, you can actually. What's the next slide? Oh yeah, this is the big show kicker here. One more. Keep going. There you go. That's how we make it happen for Josh.
Yes.
You can get rid of the slides. So my take, though, on the whole market of the moment is that I don't think we're in a situation right now, and I know we've all had these conversations. I talked to Zan yesterday. What I don't think is happening in the market yet, and I'm open to everybody's experience, is I don't think we are in a situation where we haven't seen any sort of price dumping en masse. We haven't seen prices drop precipitously the way they did in 2008. So as far as tomorrow or next week or next month, us being flooded with short sales or REOs, I don't think it's necessarily going to happen. It happened big time in 2008. There was definitely a spike. There are always short sales happening. There are always REOs happening. I just don't think yet, right now, that we're going to be flooded. If you remember also back in 2008, once that craze was over, the foreclosure craze, there were what was called shadow inventory, meaning everyone was saying that the banks had taken back all of thousands of properties and that they owned thousands of REOs, and that eventually they were going to have to come back and flood the market. I don't think it really has ever happened. They're either still sitting on them or they kind of trickled back into the market. Again, if you go on the MLS right now and you do a word search for REO, foreclosure, distress sale, you're going to see that there are REOs on the market. There's a house nearby me in Encino, for $2.5 million that was an REO, around $2 million. Austin, the house on Havenhurst, sort of up at the top, right before you get to Calneva, about a year ago. And I don't know if it was possessed or whatnot, but it just kept bouncing from one person to the next. Really nice house, big house. That's the other thing that, quite often short sales and REOs get this negative connotation, like it's a dirty business, or as listing agents, we're doing something wrong by taking them. Like before I was talking about evictions and whatnot. Look, nobody wants to evict somebody. However, I didn't put them in this situation. And I'm not trying to be cold-hearted. I didn't put them in this situation. The situation is what it is. You have to look at it in terms of you're helping out the process. The first short sale I ever did was an interesting situation where these parents owned this house. It was in Northridge, and they had years earlier put the house in their son's name, who when I met him was like 21 or 22, was just graduating college, and the parents could make the payments. But the house was in the kid's name, and he's just starting his life. And if that house went into foreclosure, he would have been screwed for the next 7-8 years with his credit. It would have been on his sort of financial record. So I was able to help them do a short sale, and yeah, they still took a hit, but it was not as bad as it would have been. So that's how you have to kind of look at it in terms of you're not taking advantage of anybody. Are there people that take advantage of distressed properties? Absolutely, and that happened in 2008. I actually was on the receiving end as well. I had a couple of properties listed. And again, the other important thing to remember back with a short sale, when a bank agrees to accept less money than they're owed, the seller, they're not making any money. They're getting out of the deal without having to pay the balance, but they're not making any money. The bank is making the money. I had a situation where the brother of the seller was trying to put the squeeze on me by saying, look, I'll give you the deal, but I want part of your commission. And I said, it's illegal. I can't do that. I'm not going to risk my license, blah, blah, blah. You're going to sign documents saying that you don't make anything. So you have to understand the ramifications of it. And my point in bringing this up is that, yes, there are people, it's even like in a regular sale, you know, hey, they're going to pull you aside and say, I want a kickback. I want part of your commission, you know, blah, blah, blah. You have to figure out how you deal with that. But there's not anything wrong with helping buyers and or sellers deal with short sales. They're not always bad. They're not always crappy homes. There are you know, short sales and REOs in Beverly Hills for all different price points, for all different reasons. Boom, boom, boom. And again, we're helping both the borrower and the lender. As far as the borrower goes, our client, you know, we're helping them avoid a big hit to their credit. With the lender, we're helping them by, you know, they don't have the books on their, the house on their books. But in both situations, neither one of them will thank you at the end of the deal. They're just gonna move on. The other thing to realize, and this is in the book on page 239 and 240, to understand that, you know, look, you can listen to people in our office talk about how they door knock every day and they get 19 listings a day. Great. You can talk to people in our office who only do open houses 6 days a week and they get 19 listings a week. Fantastic. You can, you know, expireds, whatever it is, we all do what works for us. There are people that, as I said, treat REO as a volume business and they do very well, or they focus on short sale, you know, distressed buyers, distressed sellers. But you have to understand that this is a sort of it's totally doable, but it's kind of a niche business, and especially REOs. And if you want to stay in that game and be a repeat customer with REOs, you really have to understand what's involved and do it well again and again and again. Yes, that applies to us with our regular clients, but if you're trying to make it in that business, you need to understand what's involved, and it's a little different. But I think you also want to diversify and not only focus on REOs, because when those slow down or when your asset manager, you know, gets relocated to a different region, like I'm dealing with an asset manager and they focus on Southern California, all of a sudden they work at Wells Fargo, they've now been, you know, put on the Pennsylvania account. My guy's gone. Maybe I'm shit out of luck with all the REOs I was expecting for my pipeline. So in the same way with, forget about distress sales, with lead generation, you know, don't only focus on door knocking, because as COVID has showed us, I don't think anybody's door knocking for 3 months. Or if it rains for 2 weeks in a row, you're not going to be able to door knock. Don't only focus on expireds. Don't only focus on FSBOs. Don't be a jack of all trades. That's not what I mean. But have more than one thing that you're doing. And if you're focusing on making REOs as part of your menu, great. But don't make it be the only thing, because they can dry up or things can change beyond your control. So that's my 2 cents on foreclosures, short sales, and REOs. Open to discussion, open to questions, whether it's about baseball coming back or REOs, whatever you want to talk about. Anyone. Let's jump in. Austin, I know you want to ask something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was just going to say, make a comment on your baseball comment. I forget about baseball. I want college football to come back, or any football for that matter. So, no, great job. You know, one thing I will add, you had mentioned earlier, you know, when we get into distressed properties, when you're submitting an offer, make it as complete as possible. And you also said, look, for our regular deals, do the same. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, quite honestly, any offer that you're writing, guys, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, make it as complete as possible. Because I tell my buyers, hey, can we submit without this or without that? I said, no, we can't. I mean, yes, technically we can. But imagine if I'm the listing agent and I receive two offers at the same time. One is complete and the other's not. So yeah, I'm going to show them both to my seller. I'm going to say, well, this one's complete and we can move forward with this one. The other one, I got a lot of questions. You've got a lot of questions. And it's going to take longer. And it could be a pain because that could be an indication of how this buyer is going to operate and how this buyer's agent is going to operate. So you guys make sure whenever you're writing offers, just make sure they're complete, that they're legible, that they come in one nice neat package, come up with a template for your emails.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it, in my opinion.
That's a great call. That's a great call. And I think that just goes back to systems. To me, systems are templates, to Austin, to use your word. When I submit an offer to my sellers, I use the same email. You know, congratulations, Austin, we've received an offer, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just a breakdown of who the buyer is. I'm sorry, even when I submit it to my seller, it's here's the template email. When the offer is accepted and I have to open escrow, it's the same email. Guys, anything we do more than once requires a system. A system doesn't need to be with lots of moving parts and whatnot. It's making our lives easier for anything that from my opinion, anything that we do more than once. And to Austin's point, make it clean. Please don't make me do your job, because you're going to remember that, you know, on future deals. You're going to, it telegraphs when another agent gives you something that's half-assed, it telegraphs how they do business. And when the roles are reversed, when they have a listing and you want to submit on it, you might think, oh man, I hope I get this house for my client. However, I know what this escrow is going to be like. They don't respond to phone calls. They don't get back to me in a timely manner. It's like pulling teeth, you know? But again, you have to take the emotion out of it. It's not what I want. It's what my client wants. So we're going to do it. So great point. Anyone else?
Hi, yeah, this is Roxanne. I just experienced that this morning. I got an accepted offer, didn't even get a counter because my offer was so complete, and the letter I wrote was about my buyers, everything about my buyers. So I was still kind of expecting a counter, and we got accepted. So it does work. It matters. And thank you, Howie. Thank you for this class.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, and Roxanne, that's actually a great point on a different level as well, just separate from what we're talking about with short sales, but just when you're representing a buyer, this is sort of a side note, when you're representing a buyer and you submit an offer, you know, quite often, look, it's not up to me, it's not up to you, it's up to what the buyer wants to do. We advise them. However, at the end of the day, we submit what they want to submit. You know, quite often buyers will think, well, I'm going to start at this number and then I'm going to see where they're at. And then I'll, you know, in the counter, I'll really kind of give them my whole offer. Look, you get one chance to make a first impression, and you are not guaranteed of a counter offer in any situation. And even if you get a counter offer, if it's a multiple counter offer, and let's say they give you 72 hours to respond, somebody else responds in an hour with a much better offer that blows them out of the water, they can accept it. So you have to be careful. You have to sort of advise your clients, your buyers on it. This is a game. It really is a game. And I know that they've got emotion in it because it's, oh, this is the house we've always dreamed of. I get it. That's all important. However, you have to kind of treat it like a game sometimes, in that, you know, go heavy or go home, that type of thing. And I don't mean overbid, but make my advice to all my buyers, and as well as if I have a listing and another agent will say, you know, where do I need to be? I don't usually give out numbers if I'm representing the listing. But all I'll say is make it so nobody else can get the house. If you want this property, not about, I don't really like it. But if you want this property, make it so nobody else can get this house. That's my best advice. So,
question, Howie. Hi, this is Nazi. How are you?
Hey, Nazi.
Good, and thank you so much for all this helpful information. How about if the house is overpriced?
If you're writing an offer on a property that's overpriced?
Yes.
You know, again, you have to sort of read the tea leaves. It depends on how long it's been on the market. It depends what else is going on. Look, I'm not the expert on writing offers. We all have to sort of feel our way through kind of what makes sense. And I think every situation is different. If you know in your heart of hearts that it's overpriced, and you know, you can look at 4 comps on the same street, same house that sold for, you know, $9.99, and this house they're asking 1.3. You know, ask the agent, how did you come, before you write the offer, how'd you come up with this number? Maybe there's something about it that you don't see, or, you know, the toilets are gold plated, or there's something inside the, you know, the roof that has never been done. I don't know, but just ask. And if they, case in point, Nazi, there's a house here in Encino that sold about 1.5 years ago for $8.5 million. And it's back, and a brand new house. It's back on the market for $16 million. So I asked the agent, why $16 million? You know, did they do anything to it? And the answer was no, other than they put furniture in it. And I said, that's twice as much money. It's 8 and 8. I said, you can build another house for $8 million. And the agent literally said to me, I know it's overpriced, just give me an offer. So in that case, again, conversation with the agent helps. Not all agents will give you, you know, information. So you just have to kind of go with your gut, and, you know, your buyer has to be okay with, look, if they believe based on your comps that it's overpriced and they want to come in at, you know, $950, you got to stick to your guns. If they don't get it, I mean, maybe somebody will pay 1.2, and then you just have to say, you know, it wasn't our day type of thing. But there's no black or white. It really is just kind of what you think. You know, I think most things come down to ask the right questions, and you'll get a lot of information that will help you make a decision. And yeah, it could be as simple as they're crazy. You know, they're overpriced because they don't really need to sell. And on the sell side, they're just kind of kicking the tires, and they're testing the waters. So I understand not wanting to be that buyer that says, oh, I'm, you know, paying $300,000 over. So,
got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. Are we on time? Coming up on 11 o'clock. I'm good. Anybody else? I'm good to keep talking. If anybody has, I'm not cutting us off, but I'm respecting everyone's time. Anybody have questions, thoughts, suggestions?
Howie, I like your analogy of it's a game. I tell a lot of my clients it's the analogy I use is I say it's a junior high school dance. You dress up as best you can. You scope the room. You see who you want to ask to dance, exactly. And the one that's most complete, the one that's most put together, is the one that oftentimes you move forward with.
Yeah. The other analogy I use, it's like dating. You know, right. On the buy side, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. You got to meet a lot of people. And sometimes these relationships work out, sometimes they don't. And it's the same thing with properties. You know, your offer can be accepted. You think it's the greatest house, but then you do your inspections and there's so much wrong with the property that either you don't want to take on or the seller's not willing to give you credits for. So you have to say, you know what, we're gonna stay friends, and we're gonna go our own way.
Friend zone.
We're in the friend zone. Yep. What else?
All right, I'm out. Thanks a lot, Howie.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, Austin.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Howie.
You bet. So if we're good, again, I'm here to answer any questions, or if everybody's cool, then let's say goodbye. And as our good friend Josh says, make it happen. Anyone?
Thank you, Howie.
All right.
Ask if this is going to be posted anywhere to rewatch it.
It'll be posted later on our YouTube channel. I'll
Okay.
get it up there as soon as I can.
Thank you.
I would have worn a different shirt if I had known we were being recorded. All right, guys. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, Howie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.